Leviticus chapter number 1. I think within the first 7 chapters of the book of Leviticus, it talks about several different offerings. Some of those we have talked about before, but really the first 5 chapters talks about man's responsibility in those offerings, and then the chapter 6 and chapter 7 really focuses in on the priest's part of the offerings, essentially the worship at the tabernacle. But here's the amazing thing: the book of Leviticus picks up right where the book of Exodus left off. So why would you start at Leviticus? Well, I don't know. I did that years ago. I went through the book of Leviticus, and I should have went through Genesis and Exodus first, but I don't know why. I just felt led to go through Leviticus, and it was a tremendous blessing just to see Christ in so many different ways throughout this book. And when you just go through and you read this book, a lot of people will come up with the assumption that it's very boring. Why would I want to read the book? Why would I want to read about Levitical law? How does that apply to me today? Well, it actually applies to us very much so. And really, it's not so much about law, it's about love. We've talked about this before, but many people will say, well, God wasn't very loving in the Old Testament. Well, how was God's Testament? Well, how was God's people in the Old Testament? Not very loving back to Him, but they are in a good spot. They're in a really good position with God. They're in a really good place. They're exactly where God would have them to be. And it says here in verse number 1, "And the Lord called unto Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, If any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd and of the flock. If his offering be a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord." Is this the very first time that offerings or sacrifices was designated by God? I think sometimes we look well, now we have the tabernacle congregation, now we have all the furniture made up, and now God is going to give essentially, we would call it a command, but he says right here, he says, if they want to bring an offering, let it be of their own free will. And how can any person say that God controls every single person when right there in the Bible it tells you that they have to bring their offering voluntarily? If God's controlling every person, God's controlling everything, the Bible's wrong right there, right? And their doctrine's right. But we know, right? We know that the Bible's right and bad doctrine is still bad doctrine. So this is not the very first time that a sacrifice is brought up. When would the first time a sacrifice happen? When did that happen? When was the very first one? Huh? Yep, in the Garden of Eden. That's the very first sacrifice that ever was. They tried to make themselves aprons, and God said that's not going to work, and God goes and sacrifices some animals, and we're not exactly sure how many, but enough to make them some clothes. And that also tells you that you cannot cover your sin by your own works. God has to do the covering. And so, because no doubt they could have probably found enough fig leaves and made themselves, aprons that would cover themselves, but God said it's not going to work. Your works don't cover your sins. It's my work that covers your sins. So you have in the Garden of Eden, that being the very first one. Then you don't have one but a chapter later. It's between two brothers, and one of them loses his life over his sacrifice, Cain and Abel. Then you have when Noah gets off the boat, you have another sacrifice that is made. Then you also have, in the book of Job, you have Job that is giving burnt sacrifices for his children. Now, some people will say that Job was not pre-Leviticus. I will say this, I believe with all my heart that it is, and here's why I believe that. Job never mentions no tabernacle. Job never mentions, I just called him Joe. Job never mentions any kind of going to priest or any of that stuff throughout his entire book. Some people would say that the book of Job is written in a very archaic language, and I would agree with that. There's a lot of words that we do not use that Job uses in his book. And so when did Job live? Well, most people think around 2200 BC. So about the time that Abraham and Jacob and all these people were living. Sometime in that area. Now, here's the thing. If it's past Leviticus, why is he talking the way that he talks? Why is he not mentioning taking his burnt offerings to the tabernacle? And you say, well, can't you worship in your own way? No, because right there it says in verse 1, and the Lord called unto Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation. So we have left off with Exodus 40. The tabernacle has been built and God has come down in a cloud and he's occupied the entire tabernacle. Nobody is allowed to walk in yet. And God speaks unto Moses and he says, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, if any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd, and of the flock. I want to stop for just 1 second, because I think this is very important. I want to talk to you about the person that's offering the offering. So the offerer. I want you to look at what it says. If any man, in verse number 2, it says, speak unto the children of Israel and say to them, if any man. Why would he say if any man? Well, if they do it. And there is a common thing that is said, well, the word if means since. That's not always true. Because now he just places it on the offerer and says, let them do it voluntarily. So it's not since that they're just going to do it, it's if they do it. If any man, because I'm going to be honest with you, if is there because people aren't normally just going to give up their stuff. Right? Isn't that a wrong way to look at it? This is mine. This is my stuff. Who give it to you? Didn't Job say, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away? So, whose is it anyways? But we and here's the thing, if we have to, in this era in which we live, we have to get this mindset right. It all comes from God anyways, then we are living faithfully. When we have that mindset, that every bit of it that we have, down to the socks on your feet, everything that you have comes from God. Everything. God has supplied all of our needs and a lot of our wants. And so when you start to look at it and say, well, that's my bulldog. That's my bull. You can't take that and give that to an offering. And notice that it says, if any man. Now here's the thing. Some Bibles will mistranslate that and say, if anyone. It's not if anyone, it's if any man. You say, how do you know that? Because look at verse number 3. If his offering. So what is going on here? Well, the offerer obviously has to have a willing heart, right? He has to have a heart for God. He has to love the Lord, but also it's for anyone. Now, we know that this is for the children of Israel, but wasn't there some people there that were of a mixed multitude? How'd they get their sins forgiven? I'll say this, it would have had to have been the same way. It had to have been the same way. So if any man, so this guy had to be a willing participant and voluntarily come. And here's the thing with the burnt offering, you get none of it. It's all consumed. It's every bit of it's burned up. You get no part of the meat. Could you imagine? I'm telling you right now, if a butcher was to see somebody just go out there and start slaughtering cattle and throwing them up on a brazen altar, they're going to be like, man, there goes a couple briskets. Yeah. There you go. I mean, just every bit of it burn up. Have you ever watched money burn? Huh? No, I mean like literally burn. I'll tell you, that one on me. I sure am glad I'm saved now. Back in the day, Brother John's told some great stories from his past that I get a crack at them. But me and my buddy one time, this guy that we knew, he said, listen, here's the deal. He said, I need a Mustang hubcap. And it just the centerpiece, and all it said was Ford. I mean, why would you want that? A, because it's a Ford product, but either way. So we found one, okay? And he said, here's what I'll do. He said, if y'all get it to me, he said, I don't know how you get it, but he said, if y'all get it to me, he said, I'll give you $20. We were just young kids, about 16 years old. And we're out riding around one night and we found one. I won't tell you where we found one out because it may have been your car. I don't know. But we just ganked it. I mean, we just popped it right off. And he come running back and jumped in the car and threw it in there. And his dad found out about it. Found out where we got it. Found out we were paid. And what happened is the guy come down to my buddy's house and said, he told his dad, he said, hey man, he said, I owe that to the boys. He said, I guess they're going to split it. And he said, they got me listen, be sure your sin will always find you out, okay? And he said, they got me a hubcap. It's just like the centerpiece. And so I get there, his dad calls me, he's like, hey, come over. He said, Richard dropped that money off to you. And I was like, oh, sweet. And get down there and he's got it twisted up like a cigar. I mean, long ways. And he's got it sitting, hanging out like a cigar in an ashtray. And he goes, are you all that stupid? That's how he started the conversation. And I was like, what's going on, playing dumb? And he took his Zippo lighter out and lit that $10 bill on fire. And it seemed like it burned for an eternity. It seems like it's still burning right now. And I thought, after that, I thought how stupid that was. That I should have never done that. Thankfully, that's all under the blood, and I don't have to pay for that anymore. But, here's the thing. We all do something. We all do something. And so the thing about it is God says, do you care that you've done it, though? Do you care that you've done it to me? That's really what he's getting at here. He says there in verse number 2, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, if any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the cattle. So if somebody could afford to bring a $5,000 bull and give it for an offering, that's what they need to do. Now, here's the thing. The guy that can afford the bull better not be bringing turtle doves, because that's not surrender. That's trying to pacify your conscience for just a little while. But we will get more into that. But he says, bring it your offering of the cattle, even of the herd, so a sheep or a goat, and of the flock. So if somebody from the richest to the poorest. Here's the thing. That's not the emphasis, though. That's not the emphasis at all. The emphasis is, do you love God? Whether you're this guy that can eat ribeyes or you're this person that has to eat, pigeon chicken legs, do you love the Lord? And if you love the Lord, there's space for all. Thank God for that, right? And so he says there in verse number 3, if his offering be a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and he shall put his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. So here's the thing. We go from the offer to the offered. There's requirements. And we are in a day and age where people won't come to church because they can say, the live stream is my church. That's never been the intention. Honest to God, that's never been, I don't think, honestly, the intention of churches for people to just stay at home. But it's made so readily easy anymore to just stay at home and say, I've had church. I can watch it online. I can give online. But there's no fellowship of the believers. Yeah, absolutely it is. It sure is. And God never instituted church to be like that. It's always been to come together, to go into homes and to teach and to worship and to take the Lord's Supper and to baptize and all these things, to learn doctrine, because it's profitable. And it's never been just worship however you want to, although a lot of people will say that. Well, I'll just go out in the woods and worship how I want to. How can you worship in a tree stand when you're asleep? Because that's generally what's going to happen. You go out there, you get up at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you walk out into the woods, and then you put yourself up in a tree, and before the sun comes up, you'll be asleep. You're not even doing the thing that you really were going out there to do. You weren't going out there to worship the Lord, although I think that we can worship the Lord like that. Man, look at what all He's done. I mean, look at this. We've been to some amazing places, Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore and Colorado. And I mean, you guys, some of you guys have too. And just amazing what the Lord has done. I mean, carved the Grand Canyon out with His finger. It's amazing. But it was never instituted to forsake the body of believers coming together can't say instituted times because He never really instituted a time, but at the times that we generally would gather together, it's to edify one another. It's to build up one another. It's not to sit at home in your PJs and eat cereal and watch the service. You say, have you ever done that before? Maybe. I have. Well, mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole thing about this is fellowship, to come together and teaching and preaching and all those things. Discipleship. How can somebody be discipled when they're at home? And they have no desire to go. A attribute or a characteristic of salvation is loving the brethren. Well, when you love the brethren, you come together with the brethren. So has anybody got anything? Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It is. Uh-huh. Yeah. And that is the purpose, is to be able to, I understand, people cannot make it to church. I get it. And thank God for the live stream. But hmm yeah. 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 I'm sure. You can reach out with that. You can, but that's never. It's never been the intention to live on that, because pretty soon. Uh, exactly. Very well put. Exactly. Reach out, but not replace. And here's the thing: when you start replacing the way that God's ordained people to do, people to worship Him, then it's not worship. It's not, according to this text, it's not a sweet savor unto the Lord. But I will say, I'm very thankful that a lot of churches, and it seems like more and more, are doing this platform, making apps and on YouTube and everywhere. I mean, that is a great tool, but it should never be used in place of coming to church and being with other believers, other like-minded believers. Okay. So back to should cost. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So free will, but it should cost something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And then, or then shall put his on the head of the burnt offering. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. I actually have 4 requirements. Really, you could probably break them down into 5 that God has listed here for us for the tribes of Israel. But the first one is the offering must come from your herd. Like you said, it has to cost something. It's not sacrifice if it's not from you. And we sing the song, I Surrender All. I think I understand the feeling and the intention behind the song, but you can't really surrender all. You really can't. Because there's going to come some things up pretty soon that you got to go back and you got to surrender. They had to do it once a year. Hey, I've done this. I surrender this to you now. And that's the point of a burnt offering, is that you surrender all to the Lord. You say, hey, this is yours, every bit. Well, we don't have an offer that wasn't given. Right, exactly. But one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's thing we have control of. Mm-hmm. That offer. Yeah. Yeah. Romans 12:2. Prime example, the Apostle Paul saying, lay down your life a living sacrifice unto the Lord. That's what we have to offer. Yeah. Yeah. This is just stuff that God's given them. God's saying, are you going to be good stewards with it, or are you going to give it back? And, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. To certain people, it would be tough. It'd be tough. You think about it. How much do people say, I just got a side of beef, and they'll eat on that for some families a whole year. So they're out and they're the whole thing consumed. There goes a lot of food. But if you don't do it, you're in dangerous ground. God says, You don't worship me? You don't sacrifice to me? It costs you nothing. And ultimately, it's going to cost God everything in the New Testament. He's going to give his only begotten Son. The book of Leviticus is far from boring. It is so far from boring. But he says there, so you have the offering must come from your herd. It must be a male. No way, shape, or form. It has to be a male. Now, these are requirements on these things here. It will probably change a little bit, especially when you get into, you'll start to notice that some things are not mentioned especially when you get down to the fowls. So offering must come from your herd, must be a male. You could separate that and say, because in Malachi, he says, you guys are offering the blind. He said, is that not evil to offer that? And he said, would you give that to your governor? Would you give that to your government official and say, hey, we really give from the heart. Well, that thing's useless. And he says, so you wouldn't do that to him. Why would you do that to God? And because it would be a whole lot easier. And I heard David Guzik say, he said, there's a kind of a joke. And he said a farmer had 2 calves born at the same time. And he said, I'm going to dedicate one of them to God, but he never did say which one. Well, one day, one of them died, and he goes, oh, God's calf died. And honestly, that is a lot of our mentality is, I'll give you so much, God, but I'm not going to give you the absolute best. And then we come in and we sing those songs like I Surrender All. We're just lying. We're just lying. And so, offering must come from your herd, male without blemish, given of your own free will. We're not going to force this because that's not worship. And it must be done at the tabernacle. So, God says, you come to me the way that I told you. You come to this one spot to do this in. You're not going to go home as you have in times past and slay the lamb and put the blood on. We're not doing it that way anymore. This is the way that it's got to be done. And if you don't do it in these ways, I'm not going to bless you and I'm not going to accept it. Isn't it just easier just to do it God's way? We say that, yeah. I mean, and it sounds like, it's like, why don't we just do it God's way? But how many churches are not doing it God's way? Well, we got to get that number up. They worry so much about that number. And I'm not going to say that I think we should worry about that number to an extent. We should. But not to the extent where we're going to conform so that, everybody gets their piece of the pie. And, because what's going to happen is when they don't get their piece of the pie, and it will come probably in a matter of about 1.5 years, 2 years, it'll come that they don't get their piece. And they're going to be like, well, I'll just go find someplace that will give me my pie. And then you know what happens? They don't last there 2 years. It's the truth. It is the truth. Thank God for pillars in churches that have stuck it out, even in times when they thought, I don't like this idea, I don't like this, I don't think that this should be the way. But you know what? The church has voted on it, and that's what we're going to do. Right? Because we're, like you said, we're not going to agree on everything. We're really not. Now, that's nothing to fight about. It's nothing to throw a songbook at somebody over. Although those things happen. Well, we're not making it very far, but this is God's way. Look at verse number 5. Watch this. Go to verse 4. And he shall put his hand upon the head of the burnt offering. So it's not so much like just, the old Benny Hinn, I just tap your forehead. No, it's a literal pressing and identifying with the sacrifice that's going to be made. This is my sacrifice for my sin, to cover my sin. And there is a big difference in what this blood did to what Jesus' blood does. in the New Testament. So make sure this covered their sin for a year. Jesus' blood washes our sins away, never to be brought up again. Thank God for that. But he says, and he shall put his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. And he shall kill now he's got to do this. This is what's so interesting about this, is he has to do this. Let me tell you something. Anybody in here a weak stomach? Anybody at all? Joe, you got a little bit of a weak stomach? No? No. Some things I do have a little bit of a weak stomach. I won't go into those things. But some things I do. But, I mean, you're literally pressing into this thing's head, and you're looking it in the eyes. Let me tell you something. That should do something. It's not this animal's fault. It's my fault. And he's going to take a knife and he's going to cut its jugular, and it's going to bleed out as best as it can. No doubt, I'm sure this thing was kicking, squalling. It looked like a PBR bull ride in the gate. It ain't even opened yet. And I'm sure it was not a pretty sight, blood going everywhere. But he had to do it. There was things that he had to do for this. It's taking initiative. Hey, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to pull the truck and trailer up and you guys pop the gate and let the bull out and then I'll see you later. No way, no how. You're going to get out and you're going to do this, bud. Listen, ultimately, this is a picture of your fault. And he says, verse 5, and he shall kill the bullock before the Lord. Notice that phrase gets brought up a lot, before the Lord. Actually, it's brought up more in the book of Leviticus than it is anywhere else in the Old Testament. It's amazing. I think it was like 50 times. Before the Lord, and the priest, Aaron's son, shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood round about upon the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he shall flay, or he shall pull the burnt offering, the skin of the burnt offering off, and cut it into his pieces. And the sons of Aaron the priest shall put fire upon the altar and lay the wood in order upon the fire. And the priest, Aaron's son, shall lay the parts, the head and the fat in order upon the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. But his inwards and his legs shall be washed in water, where the nastiness would be at. God says, get that off there, wash it off with water. And the priest shall burn all on the altar to be a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. So we've seen the offer and we've seen the offered. And the offering is, essentially the offering is this. It is pleasing to God. If it's done in the right ways, if it's done with a willing heart and the right heart, and it's done in you pull the right herd or out of the right flock, or however the case may be. But this sacrifice shows something, three things very important. Total surrender. This is total surrender. We're not getting any of this back. So God, this is all yours. It shows atonement for sin. And then lastly, it shows a pleasing aroma, or you could say peace with God. And here's the thing. This is not the only sacrifice. This is the first one that's brought up. You say, why in the world would we need other sacrifices? Well, because Jesus done more with his one sacrifice than just one sacrifice can do. There's peace offering. We have peace with God. And Jesus fulfills all these offerings. Jesus is our continual burnt offering. He is still paying for the atonement for people today that trust in him, that put their faith in him. The heave offering or the wave offering, when you would get a portion of that meat and you would wave it before God, or you would heave it before God and say, God, this come from you first, and thank you for giving it to us. That's a picture of fellowship. Jesus makes us have fellowship with God. And there's just a lot of the things that you just don't get them if you just read through the book of Leviticus. But Jesus is all over this book. Look at verse number 10. And if his offering be of the flocks, namely of the sheep or of the goats for a burnt sacrifice, he shall bring it a male without blemish, and he shall kill it on the side of the altar northward before the Lord, not the eastward, not the southward. He says, this is, I want to insert. Now, here's the thing. I'm sure there is a reason. I don't know exactly what that reason is. But there is a reason that God done it this way. And the priest and Aaron's son shall sprinkle his blood round about upon the altar, and he shall cut it into his pieces, and with his head and his fat, and the priest shall lay them in order on the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. But he shall wash the inwards and the legs with water, and the priest shall bring it all, burn it upon the altar. It is a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. And if the burnt sacrifice for his offering to the Lord be of fowls, then he shall bring his offering of turtle doves or of young pigeons, and the priest shall bring it unto the Lord, or unto the altar, and wring off its head, and burn it on the altar, and the blood thereof shall be wrung out at the side of the altar, and he shall... Listen, this is gory. This is gory stuff. I mean, this is not like something you want to show like 5 and 6 year old kids, right? Unless you just want to scar them for life. I mean, but this is a picture of what the gospel is going to look like, the death at the cross. I mean, it was a gory time. Verse 16, and he shall pluck away his crop with his feathers. Now, if you don't know what a crop is, it's almost like a secondary stomach that sits at the bottom of the throat. Chickens have them. These two sets of birds have them. And the food goes down. And this is essentially the stomach that mama birds will feed baby birds out of. And it moistens the food. God says, get that out of here. Get that and get the feathers. He says, and shall pluck away his crop with his feathers and cast it beside the altar on the east part by the place of the ashes. And he shall cleave it with the wings thereof, but shall not divide it asunder. And the priest shall burn it upon the altar. Upon the wood is upon the fire. It is a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. Let me ask you a question. Jesus' parents offered something at the temple. What was it? Because they didn't have no money. But they had that. And they give it to God and say, God, this is our offering. And you think about it, it's so amazing because she was holding the world's offering in her arms. And so they go to the temple and they bring their offering. And it's just amazing. What a picture it is. God says, you offer to me, I offered back. But his offering is so much better than our offering ever could be. But here's the thing. It was pleasing unto the Lord what they did offer. Go to Ephesians chapter number 5. People can never say that the burnt offering is not a picture of Christ. Ephesians chapter number 5. And look in verse number 2. It says, and walk in love, as Christ also hath loved us, and hath given himself for us an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling savor. It's amazing, ain't it? Every bit of it. As we go through the book of Leviticus, every bit of it points to Christ. And also, it points to us. You remember, they were putting their hands on this animal, and he was doing the killing. Our sin put Jesus on the cross. Our sin really done the killing. Go ahead.
The word he.
Mm-hmm.
He, we are an action. We have not salvation. This is a requirement of us doing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, worship costs. It does. Worship costs. Now, salvation costs God everything. It cost him his only begotten Son. But salvation to us is free. It's a gift of God, right? But worshiping God ought to cost us something. It ought to cost us something that, honestly, we could hold valuable. Whether that be money. Some people, honestly, some people give cars. Some people will give cars to churches or cars to other people so that they have, that's a sacrifice. You know, to some people it may not be a sacrifice, but I'll be honest with you. The cars that we have, we need them. And so I don't, unless the Lord says, give that car to somebody, I don't, I mean, it just is what it is. I guess it's going to stay in our name, but it ought to cost us something to worship the Lord. And it ought to be done in the right way. Go ahead, bro.
What is sacrifice? Like there's some this, other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talent.
Yeah.
Monetary.
You know something, and I never looked at it this way, but it's pretty interesting. The word burnt offering legitimately means to ascend up. The word Holocaust comes from that. And we all know how they were treated. But I thought that was such a to be able to link Leviticus with something that happened back in the 40s. You know, the word usage, especially spanning from English, well, really Hebrew, to where we would be in English, but them in German, where they've derived their word from. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. All right. Anybody else got anything? Hey, Brother Aaron, do you care to hit the stop button?